Rick Revel, Mr. History, brought to you in part by Dixie Gun Works in Union City, Tennessee. On many occasions, I've driven through the great state of Kentucky past the historical site of the South Union Shaker Village, and I've always wanted to stop and take a look. And on today's episode of History Highway, that's our destination. The Shaker Village at Auburn, Kentucky has a very unique story that needs to be shared with the rest of America. Calling their village South Union, the Shakers farmed 6,000 acres of land and carved out a special place in history for their religious sect. Taking a vow of celibacy as part of their religion, the Shakers had a lot of time on their hands without children to raise. So they became known as incredible architects and craftsmen, and the evidence of their labor is on full display at South Union. It doesn't matter if you're a reenactor who loves the smell of black powder in the morning on the battlefield, or a collector who admires the craftsmanship of a well-made weapon of old. Dixie Gun Works has a Pedersoli just for you. And not only does Dixie Gun Works have a warehouse full of Pedersoli reproduction firearms, they have an incredible collection of antique firearms. Inside the pages of their huge catalog, you will find gun parts, shooting accessories, reenactor clothing, camping supplies, and even some big guns if you like to burn a lot of powder. Dixie Gun Works is located in Union City, Tennessee. But for your convenience, visit our online store at www.dixiegunworks.com or call 1-800-238-6785.
And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
The more I would research and study about the Shaker religion, the more contradictions I would find. So I made contact with Sally Rogers, who works for the Shaker Museum, and she proved to be quite the expert on the people who once lived in this colony. Here today with Sally Rogers, and she's going to kind of give us an idea of the origin of the Shakers before they arrived here in the early 1800s. And that's kind of, I guess, got my curiosity more than anything about the origin of the place. So Miss Sally, can you tell me about the Shakers before they arrived here?
Yeah, so the Shakers actually came to America in 1774. And by 1805, the Great Revival was happening here in this part of the country. So they sent missionaries from New York, New Year's Day 1805, to head to the west. So they established 2 villages in Kentucky, 4 in Ohio, and 2 in Indiana. This village was established in 1807.
Yeah, when you said it in the west, actually Boone and Crockett both considered this the west, and when they both reached the Mississippi River, it's like, now we're going out west.
Yes.
But this was the west.
This was the west,
This
yes.
was the unsettled wilderness during their day. So
It was.
So that's kind of interesting. We're going to now move to another location because this is a huge building. What size would you say this building is?
Gosh, this building is 4 stories, and at one point 100 people lived here. It's got a kitchen, dining room. It's basically a large dormitory for the people who lived here.
Wow, that's just intriguing that it was like a real commune, so to speak.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Now this particular room here, this is kind of like a sanctuary or a place where they kind of gather as a worship, although they have another church location, but this is where they sometimes gather to have a worship service.
Right, so we're in the meeting room right now.
Okay.
So this is where the Center family would meet as a family if they couldn't all meet communally across the street in the meeting house.
Wow. So I love the room. Now, the building itself held 100 people, so this would be where all 100 would probably gather?
Right.
And there was there a central speaker, or would they take turns speaking, or how would they do those things?
So there was an elder and an eldress in charge of the entire village, so sometimes the elder probably spoke. There was also an elder and eldress in charge of the building, the family, so they may have spoke. And then sometimes, I believe, if they felt Spirit was calling them to say something, then they would do that as well.
And if it was not a religious meeting, would they have like just a community meeting just to discuss a particular situation maybe?
Sometimes they would, but those were usually done communally in the meeting
larger
house.
facility somewhere else? Okay.
In the meeting house.
Wow. I found it very odd that Shakers treated men and women as equals, but yet they had one set of steps for men and the other for women, and they weren't allowed to marry either. Sally, one of the things I guess is most unique about the Shakers was the fact that they recognized women as equals. They weren't treated as second class, and even with the races, they considered everybody equal. Can you kind of fill me in on the details?
Yeah, the Shakers were a very progressive group of people in their beliefs in equality. Again, equality of men and women, equality of races. This exhibit that we're in right now really focuses on the experience of women here and the different opportunities that they had that they probably wouldn't have had living outside of a Shaker village, especially in the 19th century.
And what's impressive is in their religion, some of the hierarchy of it were ladies. They were women that kind of were the driving force behind it.
Exactly. In charge of the village, there was an elder and an eldress, and they had equal power, equal roles, which again, very progressive to see.
Yes. Just about everything you read about the Shakers, it talks about celibacy. If they were truly celibate, why do we have a children's room?
So, yes, the Shakers were a celibate group, but sometimes whole families would join, especially early on here. The converts were so dedicated to their faith that they were willing to give up living as a traditional married family and live a communal lifestyle. So that's how children came early on. Sometimes orphans would be left on doorsteps here. After the Civil War, they were traveling around and bringing in orphans. And sometimes, in the middle of the 19th century, if you're a woman and your husband dies and you've got a farm and 7 kids, you probably have a hard time taking care of your children. So sometimes widows would bring their children here because they knew they were going to be provided for, they would have a roof over their head, they would be fed. And the Shakers provided a very good education to the children here as well. They were taught reading, writing, arithmetic, science. They were also taught a trade here, such as blacksmithing, or they were taught, how to cook, do laundry. So they were very well taken care of here.
So you mentioned earlier, we were kind of talking about this subject, and you mentioned it during the war, right after the war, they went as far as Memphis and maybe Vicksburg, getting orphans and would bring them. Was it to this location or just various locations?
Yes, so specifically the South Union Shakers were traveling out as far as Memphis and Vicksburg to bring back orphans after the Civil War.
Very benevolent.
Yes, yes.
You have to admire them for that.
Absolutely.
The children, especially in Vicksburg, if you know the story of Vicksburg, which will be one of our episodes in History Highway, they suffered drastically. So
yes, they did.
Well, the Shakers, the more I hear about them, the more I like them.
Yes, me too.
From the pens of the Kennedy twins comes a new literary composition. The renowned authors of The South Was Right and a dozen more publications have become known for their zeal for conservatism and Southern heritage preservation. In their new book, Jefferson Davis, High Road to Emancipation and Constitutional Government, Donnie and Ron Kennedy hold nothing back. They're quick to point out Davis's high road approach to emancipation, while Lincoln chose the low road. Never afraid of controversy and to go against the grain of the politically correct, the Kennedy twins expose how our constitutional republic of sovereign states has been transformed into a deep state of federal government. To get your copy of the book that defends President Davis and the South, go to www.kennedytwins.com. That's www.kennedytwins.com.
Looking for a place to go? The Alabama Music Hall of Fame should be the next place on your bucket list. From the Swampers to Nat King Cole. From country music to the blues, there are music legends everywhere. The Alabama Music Hall of Fame is at 617 Highway 72 West, Tuscumbia, Alabama. The Alabama Music Hall of Fame, where the legends live.
Hi, I'm Rick Revel, and I'm here today at the Jesse James Riding Stables, home of the Outlaw Cave, the hideout of Jesse James. Legend has it that Jesse and his gang hid out in this cave after robbing a stagecoach at Mammoth Cave. If you would like to visit his hideout and ride a horse over the trails where the Outlaws rode, come to the Jesse James Riding Stable at 3057 Mammoth Cave Road, Cave City, Kentucky. See you there. When it comes to Shaker craftsmanship, most of us think of their broom manufacturing. Remember the stairwells we saw earlier? Each graceful curve of the stair rail was handcrafted and has proven to be extremely durable over the years. Even something as simple as an oval hat box is well designed and fabricated. The women, being equally creative, would weave straw bonnets that were very durable and functional. These hats were also a part of their religious convictions to keep their heads covered. The straw was split using this unique device called a stem splitter. The razor-sharp tines would split the straw as it was pulled beneath the thumb press. The ladies even produced silk thread from the silkworms that dwelled in the mulberry trees at South Union. The thread would then be woven into fine garments that would complete each lady's wardrobe. When they built furniture, the Shakers would always take the practical and simplistic approach. But the end product, without a doubt, was elegant and sturdy. And each piece of furniture was destined to become an heirloom. On the innovation side of things, the Shakers invented the child's folding bed, the one-horse wagon, the washing machine, condensed milk, and several other items we use today in everyday life. Believe it or not, I have a Shaker broom.
Do you?
I always heard about the Shaker broom, so I'm a reenactor, so I wanted a Shaker broom, and it's really unique. And they were known for their brooms because they held up so well with their furniture. That's what they're really known for. It's just incredible in this display in this room. Tell me about the craftsmanship of the Shakers.
So the Shakers really were known for furniture. In New England, they were selling their furniture, but here they were making furniture pretty much for use within the community. Shaker furniture, what most people think of is the very simple, traditional, clean lines, but the furniture that we have seen that was made here is not what you would think. It's more elaborate, it's got more turnings, more decorative elements to it, and that's because the people who joined here were Southerners, and that's a very regional way of making furniture. So they joined the village, bringing the practices and how they know how to make furniture with them. So that's why when you see the furniture that we have that was made here, it just doesn't quite fit what you would think is Shaker furniture.
It's beautiful. And just the clean lines and how well it's still standing after all these years. Now, I know some Shaker villages, they would sell their furniture to the public, but this was kind of a closer knit community. They didn't sell as much furniture out to the outside public, did they?
Right. Furniture was not where they were making their money. Their money in this village came from agriculture. That was their biggest industry here. Again, the furniture was really just primarily for use within the community. They did sell some pieces, but that was not their major source of income.
It's incredible. And I think we're going to go to the last phase of the story, kind of how the community kind of began to shrink a little bit. It's because of the railroad. Mm-hmm. We're going to go to our next location then and talk about the railroad. Before Miss Rogers tells of the fate of the Shaker colony, I think you should hear some entries from the diaries and journals of its citizens.
Brother Samuel S. McClellan is now making use of his great lathe, polishing and grinding teeth on his emery board wheels to make for the sisters some worsted combs. Ministry moved their lodging into their shop, the meeting house being too cold and unhealthy through the coldest part of the winter. They generally return back to meeting house about the 1st of May. In the general evening meeting, elder sister Melinda, filled with unusual zeal, led off in shouting, dancing, and stamping, the spirit of which took strong hold of the assembly. 1829, August 23rd, cheese making. The Center family has made 40 cheese today, about 1,500 pounds. We are now, by the blessing of God, in good living circumstances, having plenty of the good things for the body and soul, and ought to be more thankful than we seem to be. Peddling trip. George E. Waddle and Houston Shannon with a 6-horse team went to Nashville with 2,200 pounds of flour and 100 brooms for sale. Public meeting was free and unrestrained. The feeling and spirit was such as to remove all restraint, the presence of the world being no obstacle. They sang the well-known revival song, "Come old and young, come great and small, there's love and union free for all, and every one that will obey has now a right to dance and play."
Another called meeting. The brethren all called again to the frame house and lectured on the impropriety of trying to hold private property, claiming horses as their own, and trading out of union with the elders and trustees, and even speculating on one another. thus supporting a spirit of selfishness and the spirit of the world. Great shame for believers, after so long a privilege, and required everyone, without exception, that whenever any money came into their hands, to immediately give it up in the allotted order. Another display of the dragon's power. An unconstitutional law was passed by the Kentucky legislature today, whereby a divorce is allowable by one of a party joining the Shakers, and the party not joining obtaining all the property and the children of the family. O Kentucky, noble Kentucky, how thou art fallen. 1816, September the 4th. Agreement. About 30 of the most prominent among the brethren assembled together in the elders' room on Sabbath, and agreed not to go in debt for anything but bread and water, salt and medicine. The largest assembly of believers came together at the meeting house that ever met before at one time at South Union, near 300.
There is a place, nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home, constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost. Stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
Good Major, I have often said that it's history that gives us hope, and without that hope, I fear our nation will be extinguished. And we must preserve our history and our heritage. And through our writing, we have tried to do so. One of our books is called Appalachian Rebels. It's by Richard G. Brown and myself, Dave Chaltis, and you can find them on Amazon.com.
Appalachian Rebels is a compelling story of the 5th Kentucky Infantry that became the 10th Kentucky Mounted Rifles and later the 13th Kentucky Cavalry. Get your copy of Appalachian Rebels today at Amazon.com.
Here are the Prices who have come into new membership. This morning they are to sign their formal agreement, admitting them to full church relationship by turning over all their property to the United Society of the Believers. Brother and Sister Price, I have your formal agreement ready for your signatures this morning.
Brother Aston and Sister Peggy, I should like to welcome you to our order. This seems to be ready for your signatures to the contract.
Sign here.
Yes, sir, right there. Sister, right here.
It is a great satisfaction to see the new members keep coming. This brings the total to a peak figure of 349.
Bless you, brother. Bless you.
Although the Shakers had a strong socialist mentality, their love of capitalism was always ever present. When the L&N Railroad came through their community, the elders got together and devised a plan. In 1869, this hotel and tavern was built to accommodate the travelers of the rail line. This massive outside chimney was designed to handle 3 separate fireplaces, which makes it somewhat unique. Sadly enough, what brought temporary profits to the colony eventually would usher in its permanent failure. We talked about the railroad earlier. Not too far behind us is the railroad tracks, and kind of fill me in on what it was what impact did the railroad have on the community?
So the railroad, that's the L&N Railroad. That came through in 1860. Okay. And so after the Civil War, there were Shakers who, the railroad just opened up the world to them. After the wars, when the depot was completed, and so you could be in Louisville in a couple of hours, you could be in Nashville in a couple of hours, and so these young people who maybe would have never left Logan County, the world just kind of opened up to them. Now there were good aspects to the railroad here. It helped open up commerce even more, and they could get their products out. But a lot of people think that because the Shakers were a celibate sect, that's what caused the decline. But the railroad was a big factor. Another factor was just as time went on, there wasn't that need for an agrarian and a farming lifestyle. There wasn't a need to live communally in order to survive. People were able to live on their own.
Well, Miss Sally, I've really enjoyed the tour of the Shaker Village here at South Union, near, is it Auburn?
Yes.
Near Auburn,
yes.
Kentucky. So I've enjoyed being here with you, and invite everybody to come out and see South Union, the Shaker Village.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The show would not be complete if we did not demonstrate how the Shakers earned their name by dancing and shaking about.
Come life, shaker life, come life eternal, shake, shake out of me all that is carnal. Come life, shaker life, come life eternal, shake, shake out of me all that is carnal. I'll take the steps, I'll be a tailor, I'll show Michael twice how he behaved. I'll take the steps, I'll be a tailor, I'll show Michael twice how he behaved. Come life, shaker life, come life eternal, shake, shake out of me all that is carnal. Come life, shaker life, come life eternal, shake, shake out of me all that is carnal. I'll take the steps, I'll be a tailor, I'll show Michael twice how he behaved. I'll take the steps, I'll be a tailor, I'll show Michael twice how he behaved.
My crew keeps me on the road from episode to episode, 'cause they all know I got a million stories to tell. And I'm no dinosaur, it's cool to explore what makes a country great and put the crack in the living well. So take a ride down the history highway. We're headed back to the days of old. So take a ride down the history highway. I got the pedal to the metal and I'm letting this Chevy roll. I got the pedal to the metal